Although Nancy felt a tight bit of alarm in the pit of her stomach, her mind was racing. Obviously, she and her friends had been kidnapped, and what made it worse was that the three girls were locked in separate rooms. No chance to plan an escape. Before the young sleuth could decide what to do, she heard Bess cry out, "Anne! Jackie! Where are you?" "Don't panic," Nancy advised. "That won't get us anywhere." The girls realized that if they tried to discuss a plan of action through the walls, their captors would hear them and foil any attempted escape. Each one had to fend for herself. While Bess and George began a minute examination of their prisons, Nancy looked through the keyhole. The key was gone, but she was sure the lock on this bedroom door was a common type. That's a break, she thought, and opened her purse. She took out a bobby pin and a nail file. First, she inserted the file into the keyhole and held it tight. Next, she pushed in the bobby pin. By manipulating the first one and then the other, she finally managed to get the door open. Silently, Nancy stepped into the hallway and listened. She heard the front door slam and tiptoed to a window, just in time to see the sham Cosgroves get into a green sedan and roar out of the driveway. Obviously, Stephen had left too, because his fancy gold-colored car was nowhere in sight. All was quiet, and Nancy was inclined to think that they were alone in the house, but she could not be sure. Quickly, she went to Bess's door and started to work with her makeshift tools. Bess heard the noise. "Nancy! George!" she called out. "Shh," Nancy whispered. "I'm trying to get you out." Within minutes, she had released the lock and entered the room. The girls quickly went to their friend's room, and Nancy inserted her nail file into the lock. There was no sound from inside the room. Had something happened to George? Finally, the bolt snapped and Bess pushed the door open. The room was empty. "George!" Nancy called out softly. There was no reply. She walked to the window, and a big grin spread over her face. "Bess, come here," she said, pointing to a large maple tree directly in front of her. A long branch extended almost to the window. Climbing down the last 2 feet of the trunk was George. "Hi," Nancy called softly. George looked up and chuckled. "I'm an escapee." Nancy smiled as Bess reached her side and heaved a sigh of relief. George continued her descent. "So what do we do next?" Bess asked. "I think you and I can risk tiptoeing through the house," Nancy replied. She motioned for the girl below to wait for them, and the two quickly got their luggage. They hurried down the stairs, trying to move as noiselessly as possible. They opened the front door and slipped outside. George was waiting for them. The girls had not gone very far when they realized that the ground beyond the garden was marshy. The mud ruined their shoes and spattered on their dresses, but the three friends hurried on until they were out of range of the house. Nancy looked back. The house behind them seemed deserted. "I guess we're safe enough,"